Okay, so here we are on turn 6, Halls of Montezuma. Ran through the random events or events stage. First thing that was a seriously random event is, well, on a 9, the game's over. That, seems like a really, really variable way to end things. It's not like I think even under the best of circumstances, the U.S. couldn't win if the game ended on this turn. You know, just a matter of there's just not enough time to have gotten things down. Now, under these circumstances, it's possible the U.S. wouldn't win by turn 10. But my feeling here is a single die roll can cancel really the whole game. And where the turn ends, yes, it's very unlikely that it ends on turn 6. But where the game ends is really a big swing here. Because if the U.S. is doing well, they're not going to be able to win even at this early period, unless they're doing tremendously well. Anyway, after that, reinforcements came in, and the 12-month volunteers left, which meant a pile of U.S. troops had to leave the board. Doesn't really look like it affects too much. It was a lot of those kind of crappy steps anyway, that really you just take as casualties when you can. For the events for the turn, I already threw them up there. Some of them involved looking at the PW markers and switching them around. We see, though, Mexicans got some reinforcements off the cards. And we got that raid set up again, which is going to threaten this stack. It's the only stack that I could do that to, so that's why it's there, as well as dropping the political will. There was also another revolt. The Mexicans got to choose the location again. They're taking in Nuevo Leon, largely because this is where the Americans are most likely to break through, they think, and make things harder on them. Probably don't really want the revolt there, but they don't have much choice. They have to put it somewhere. All right, and I guess it's time to deal out the cards and start going. One thing I was thinking about, and this is a real problem for me with all the CDGs, or nearly all, is that the level of big decision making comes on nearly every card. Usually you're not sitting there saying, okay, I've figured out what I'm going to do, and then you do a lot of things. And that may be what a lot of people like about the systems. I think it's what I dislike. I have to expend the effort to think, which means I walk away from the game. And I want to come back to it fresh because I have a new big decision to make. If I'm playing something that's got a lot of mechanics in it, I kind of like having like about a half hour of actions based on a big decision, kind of minimum. Very different, I think, from the modern thinking. The modern thinking is every decision is important, and when you play it, you know, you're ready for the next big decision. You don't have a lot to see how your decision actually develops. Now, in order to introduce the random chance, etc., this game throws a lot of stuff into it in between those, but it's not something that you can watch develop on the board. And that kind of saddens me, of course. Alright, anyway, that probably doesn't belong in this part of the video, but I just like to point out things that I'm thinking of. Let's go. Well, the U.S. opened things up with the Oregon Treaty. Now, that decreased the Mexican political will. It also is going to give the U.S. an infantry unit, which that was not in New Orleans. And it forced a supply event, though, and the supply event is what really was cool. because first of all, these guys were out of supply, and that's why the Americans played it, causing the half thing. But it also caused a blockade event, which pulled a unit out of the regroup box for the Mexicans forever. Anyway, on to the Mexican turn. Well, Taylor managed to force his way across the Rio Grande and push Arista's out of supply forces back into supply, actually, but made me notice this marker shouldn't be here, and it's been used in battle. It's field works in one of them damn transit spaces, and I don't know. It's so hard to tell. It's not a matter of, oh God, I can't do that. It's just remembering that you can't. I knew that you couldn't, but noticing that that's a transit space, which isn't necessarily all that obvious. Yes, it is when it's clear on the map. When there's a counter on it, well, maybe this is the price I pay for stacking my counters instead of putting them in the control boxes. I find the control box is kind of difficult, and I try to avoid such mechanisms when I can. Anyway, I just had them fall back into the river or something. It's going to be on the Mexican turn. Taylor's pushing forward. Personally, I don't think the U.S. is doing all that well, so I don't think their cheating is helping them. Alright, and I guess we'll just keep going with the turn. So far, Taylor chased Arista further. Arista got a successful avoid battle, but now Santa Anna has slid up and is attacking Taylor. Taylor's going to accept the fight, and we're going to see how that works. So Kearney slid over and knocked Bravo out of Matamoros. Kind of a tough fight. Die rolls were, well, the total firepower of the Mexicans actually had more. They had the same modifiers, but the bad die rolling, which was really a 0 and a 2 for the Americans, which meant there was a leader loss check, which ended up killing Wool, who's a particularly bad leader with his high strategy value, but and no other advantages really. Ended up killing Wool, and that offset the 2 points, so there was only a 1 point gain for the Americans there. However, they did manage to clear the way for the river to get another army moving down, and it's just, you know, it's tough to see which way this is going in terms of the line here. It's definitely a failure in terms of the naval invasion. Scott didn't have enough cards to push forward this turn, so he stuck up in New Orleans after that failed attempt last turn, or failed attempts. Back on the Mexicans, they're mainly trying to play to delay at this point, but they've got such an advantage. They want to wipe Taylor out, you know? So let's see what happens. Well, the turn ended up ending with Santa Anna taking some replacements, but then not being able to push forward. His movement card gave him absolutely 0 movement allowance. He can't move. On the other hand, Donovan here also was trying to push down to get an advantage on Bravo, and he didn't get enough movement to even remove the fortifications here. He just moved down to join Kearney. He could have removed him up here. So we're not seeing a lot of action happening. Armies are kind of slow on bad card draws, and it's another very random aspect of the game that I kind of like. I kind of like that you activate a force and you don't know how far it's going to be able to go. Alright, well, let's take care of the end of turn cleanup stuff. And isolated control markers, I don't believe there are any. Does the Mexican government collapse? And as always, we got to look at this table here. We actually have some problems here. There's 2 states in revolt that I haven't cleaned up. I think just 2. So that's +2. The U.S. doesn't control any. The government's unstable, though, so that's +3. The blockade level's 3. So now I'm at +6. And we're at the point where the government could easily collapse. It does not. In fact, it's stable, which gets rid of that penalty for the earlier instability. None of this would be a problem if Santa Anna were still president. He doesn't have to worry about this. But there was an election that boned him, basically. And there are cards that can do the same thing. Okay, so now we drop down to do the active revolt spread. I don't remember the number on this at all. These games have so many different things. You know, it's like it's almost all chrome because, but even the basic mechanics are hard to find because they're written as though it's chrome. Very little explanation and effort and layout is put towards the movement itself. So it took a long time to find, hey, was this a game where you can just pick up units or just drop off units? It turns out it's one where you can just drop off units. But it took quite a while to find that one line in all the, what really is a lot of very chromy features. Nothing feels common between them. Damned if I know. It should be here somewhere. Spread 8 through 9 because the government has not collapsed. So actually the US gets first choice of which one they want to spread. There isn't a lot of option out of Alta California, so they're going to go with Nuevo Leon. And in fact, it does spread. And, oh, no, the Mexicans get first choice. Well, they'll pick that one. Okay, so they get to choose where to spread it. And this is kind of painful. There's nowhere they really want this to happen. I think I'm going to drop it. Wow. I think I'm going to drop it back to San Luis Potosi, but that's annoying. Actually, from here, I can throw it over into this area, Durango. And that kind of takes it out of the campaign area. But I really don't want the revolt spreading in the campaign area. And then the other one is up here in Alta California, which can only go into Sonora, and it does not. What else do we have? PWs for state control, revolts, la la la. And that's looking on the charts to see where we're going to be. I'll do the calculation, come back in a moment. So the only effects are the 2 states in revolt and these raids. And that's dropped us down to a 22, which just doesn't feel like much. I mean, it feels like the Mexican government's doing quite well in terms of holding up. I mean, look, they've got to not only collapse, which I think is going to happen, perhaps, but get down below 10 by whenever the game ends. And the game could end now. Seriously. In fact, I'm moving this forward. I should roll this right now because this could be the end of the game. And let me roll. And I'm going to have to do it really should happen at the end of the turn rather than at the beginning, at least for videos. The game does not end, so we're going to continue on. And we'll see if the Americans can make any more headway in turn 7. They didn't do very well in turn 6 at all.